Greetings, listeners, and welcome to The Spiritual Experience, a show where we share stories of life, love, and redemption for all of humanity on Earth. So sit back and enjoy. Try to identify with the speakers and not compare. Don't forget to subscribe on all podcast platforms. I'm your host, Jay Lewis, and here we go. All right, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you guys are, however you are. We have a special guest today. Now, I grew up in Rockland County, upstate New York, and which is the best place on earth to grow up. We're 30 minutes outside of the greatest city on earth, but we still have all of the, all of the pomp and circumstance of, going to school and playing sports and Little League and all of these things. There was no like PAL or whatever that my cousins had in the city. So somebody that, oddly enough, he's basically an extended family member, and used to kind of watch us as a kid, and then his sister used to watch us as a kid, and I used to play with his brother. And he's a teacher, a public school teacher. He's a football coach. He's a smart guy, and somebody that, as a human being walking this earth, I would be, if I had a chance to vote, I would want my kids like in this guy's classroom. So everybody, I want to introduce you to Kurt. Kurt, say hello.
Hey, everybody.
All right. So first things first, Kurt, where are you from?
Well, it's funny. Whenever anyone asks me from that, I always say I'm from the Bronx. I was born in Queens, but when I was a year old, we moved to the Bronx. We lived there until I was 8. Then we moved up to Rockland County. And I lived in Rockland County for a while till college, and then I moved back to the Bronx, and now I live upstate.
Right. So, but you never left New York.
No.
Well, no. You got the Yankee hat on now. I get it. I get it. So, when did sports really start to get a hold of you growing up? Like, because I know you're like a football guy. Like, when did you start playing sports?
That's funny because I was a pretty bright kid. When I was little, I skipped first grade. Mm-hmm. And
which is impressive.
I could read pretty well. I don't know if I've moved on past that since then, but but when they put me in second grade, they would be in contact with my parents because I was a little younger than the other kids. And at one point, the principal of the school contacted my dad and said, "Oh, we need to talk to you. Can you come in?" So my dad goes in, and he's a U.S. Marine, tough guy, and they bring him in. And they go, "Well, your son's a little bit of a lollipop." And my dad was like, "Wait, what?" Because, like big head, small body, kind of meek. And my dad took that the most offensive way possible. So we got out of there and we went right to Herman's. Remember Herman's, the sporting goods store?
Yes, I remember the name, yeah.
Yeah, so we went right in there and he bought a football. And he handed it to me like, "All right, you're going to learn how to play football." Now, my dad doesn't even like football, but to him, that was a tough guy thing. He's going to learn football. We buy the football, we come home. The Dallas Cowboys were playing in the Super Bowl that year against the Denver Broncos. So the first football game I ever saw was Cowboys beating the Broncos 27-10.
Wow.
And I sat there and watched the whole game. And back then it was, America's team and the star on the helmet and the cheerleaders. And I loved it. And I just immediately fell in love with football. And anyone that knows me knows I'm the biggest Dallas Cowboy fan, And
right.
That's really when it started. That's where the sport of football and then later on soon so many other sports. But first that really hooked me, and it was all because, a teacher or a principal made an offhanded remark to my Marine dad. And
if you set like that stage, I mean, it sounds like perfect, like in a movie. Like, you can see your dad, going in to the school. It's like, what? Like your dad's this Marine, the Dallas Cowboys, like the whole thing. Yeah. It sounds like very theatrical. So, but like, that was your real life. So, did you start playing like in leagues?
Yeah. Soon after that, we moved upstate. And then I started playing just, pee-wee football. And I played for years, and I loved it. And I was playing baseball. And then the neighborhood we lived in was great.
Where did you live?
We lived in Haverstraw at this point, and we lived around this park called Village on the Green. And basically, it was this half-mile circumference park that had a basketball court in it and these open fields and a playground. And when we went out, we played sports every day. And then the Little League fields were a half mile away, so we would walk or ride our bikes there. So I was just kind of indoctrinated with sports. It was everywhere.
Right.
And so I played Pee Wee ball for years. I enjoyed it. When my parents split,
How old were you?
when my parents, when they started getting rough with each other, I was like 10, 11.
Right.
And then the divorce is final when I'm 13, about to turn 14. And I start high school. I get hurt a couple times playing, as a freshman.
What kind of hurt?
Well, I got shot with a BB gun above my eye.
Oh.
I sprained my shoulder pretty bad. It was the first time my grades really took a hit, and a lot of stuff was going on for a 13-year-old kid. It was a lot going on, so I stopped playing football.
Right.
Organized football. And within a year of that, though, my little brother, he started playing football, like Pee Wee football. He was like 7, and they needed help, so I would go to practice with him and just help out. And before you knew it, I was an assistant coach. And
Wow.
Yeah. So
How old were you?
I was 15.
Wow.
And I loved that. It's like I wasn't playing anymore. I had heard certain things about the football team, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to play anyway, but I like this. I love football. I have some knowledge about it. And even at that young age, it was like, I'm good with the kids. I like this. I like helping my brother. And I really enjoyed it. So 15, 16, 17, I kept coaching. I wound up winning like a small grant. It was like, like $500 or something at the end of high school from coaching.
No way.
Yeah, and it was like all right, this is all right. And then I never stopped playing with my friends. And then when I went to school in Stony Brook, I started playing intramural football and intramural softball and other things. And so that football's always kind of been in and around me, even since a little kid.
Right, but then here's the thing. Okay, so you telling your own story, obviously, whatever, you're not going to put sprinkles on it. But I'm, from an outsider's perspective, you would think I would be like, wow, I am a prodigy. I have been coaching football since I was 15 years old or 16 or whatever. I got this, you're very cavalier about the accolades. But in reality, it's a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing for you'd be hard pressed to find another 16-year-old kid coaching other kids.
Well, there were a few other guys that did it. I don't know if they did it as long as I did,
right,
or as committed to it as I was early on. And it never felt like work. It just felt like I was hanging out with my friends. And then when August hit, it was like, all right, guys, from 6 to 8, I got football practice today.
Wow.
And I started working with 6 to 8-year-olds and eventually 8 to 10-year-olds. And then, as a college, I didn't coach as much because I was, as a college. But then I wound up coaching my team, my intramural team. And again, it's just a bunch of guys. We're just, there's no real coaching going on there. But the funniest thing was that, and part of the reason that I'm so close with you, one of the many ways, is that your mom was a teacher her whole life, and got me motivated to do that. And I remember I was 22. I just turned 22, and she's like, you should think about being a teacher. And I started to pay off my degree and things like that. But a year later, I pay off my degree, and she's like, listen, I can get you an interview at my school.
What did you go to school for?
I went for history.
Right.
U.S. history.
Okay. But did you think you wanted to be an educator? You're like, oh no, I'm going to go to law school or I'm going to do whatever.
At one point I thought about law school, and then I was like, I want to be a politician, but I didn't really know what that meant. I was a 17, 18-year-old kid when I first started college. I'm like, what does that mean? I took political science classes at Fordham.
Right.
And I was like, wow, this is nothing like politics at all. This is like science, and that's political science, But education was always in the back of my head. But, I was like, yeah, I'll get to that when I get to that. That's why I didn't take any education classes. But your mom gets me an interview to substitute teach. She's like, yeah, come here. Here's the address. There's a Roughneck place in the Bronx. So I get there. And again, I don't have any education credits. And my into the door is your mom. But it's like, what do you got after that? And I'm like, well, I was history and this and this. And they're like, did you do anything else with kids? I'm like, well, yeah, I coached football for a few years. I'm like, wait, you what? It's like, yeah, I coached football. For how long? 4 years? I'm like, for 4 years? It's like, yeah. How many kids? I was like, I don't know, 30, 40 kids at a time. How old? Like, I started with 6 to 8, and then I went to 8 to 10, and, I had some 9 to 11. And they're like, you're hired.
And you didn't even think that's like a transferable.
Yeah, it never even really connected to me. It was just, oh, I work with kids. And you work with kids? I'm like, yeah. And for a while, yeah. Did you like it? Yeah. Were you good at it? Yeah. And that's kind of what got me in the door as far as teaching. And because to me, it was, and maybe it's why I liked coaching when I was younger and still like coaching, obviously, but working with young people just make it engaging and make sure that you have some sort of a presence that kids don't screw around. Like,
Right.
We can have fun. We're going to throw the ball, but hey, back here. All right. And that worked with football. And lo and behold, it worked in the classroom when I first started.
Really?
Yeah.
So did you think like you said, okay, like similar to the story that you're painting, you say, okay, I can go in the classroom but not be like a commanding presence. Cause before we started recording, like you were saying, like, some of the coaches, there's different styles of coaching, like styles of teaching. Like there's like the Gestapo, blah, blah, like I played football in junior high school. I went to Caciat and it was like, whatever. It was a rough school. It was me and John Felipe, him and I, and like we were him, maybe there was another white kid on the team. So we were like the affirmative action white kids on the team. But like our coach, we had one coach that was like very tactical, like, almost like he would like, whatever, give you a crumb and let you make the cake. And then there was another guy who was just like the bullhorn, like he would just bark.
Yeah.
So like, what was your style of coaching? And then when you brought it to the classroom, was it like the same kind of thing?
Well, it was sort of, I'm going to tell it to you in a way that you can hear me and understand. I'm not going to yell it at you, but I'm going to talk to you.
Right. At versus talking to.
Yeah. I'm talking to you. I'm not talking at you. I'm not ordering you. We're going to go through this. I'm going to act it out, whether it's me getting in a 3-point stance on the field, or it's me actually sitting in the desk that you're sitting in right now and doing the work, So I'm modeling what I want them to do.
What grade did you start
I
at?
first started when I was subbing like every grade, K to 5. Oof. And then
in the South Bronx.
Yeah, then District 7 over 161.
Oh my God.
That's down 152nd and Tinton Avenue. And my first year there, a teacher went on pregnancy leave. So they gave me a class of, I had 41 fifth graders.
41 in one class.
In one class. There wasn't enough desks. The kids are sitting on the bookshelves and things.
No way.
And completely illegal.
Right.
Illegal.
Yeah, it's a fire hazard.
Yeah, it's just insane.
What year is this?
This was 94.
Oh, yeah, the 90s. New York was a whole nother planet.
So they're like, all right, do the best you can kind of thing. It's like, all right. I had subbed for 6 months. So I didn't have any real experience like writing lessons or putting together things. And now I got to do everything for 41 kids. And that first month, it was the first couple weeks where you kind of barking at them. And then I realized that's not really going to work. And by the end of that first week, I'd realized, all right, highs and lows. It's kind of like when you listen to Nirvana, they have loud music and they have these really soft moments. And that's kind of how I was learning to teach, like accentuate the soft moments, get them to like those moments where we're just talking and we're just kind of working through things together. So that way the loud moments don't have to come as often. And when they do come, they mean more. Like, oh my God, he got loud, And I remember it was funny, the end of my second week, I used to use these yardsticks. Every classroom used to have 1 million of them. And if you slap them against a desk hard, it makes this big snapping sound.
Yes.
And I had wrecked all of the yardsticks I had left. So
no
I had
way.
no more yardsticks left. And it was a Friday afternoon. We're getting ready to go. And the kids are, it's Friday afternoon. They're starting to act up, starting to get noisy again. It's 41 kids. I'm like, oh, shoot, what am I going to do? So I had this bookshelf nearby. And I'm like, all right, you know what I'll do? I'll pick up the side of the bookshelf and I'll just kind of boom, like just pick it up and like drop it down on the ground a little bit to make that booming sound to catch their attention instead of me yelling. Well, it's the South Bronx. It's 1994. The equipment's not good. I pick up the bookshelf a little bit, drop it down, and the thing just collapses. It just falls apart. So it looks like I wrecked it, like I did a Hulk smash on the thing.
Wow.
All the books come pouring out, and the thing just collapses. And the kids are, and they run to their desk, and they just sit there like church mice, like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, oh, my God, he just wrecked that desk. That guy's insane.
Wow.
I was like, oh, shoot. And I just go with it. I'm like, you know what? That's what I need. I need you to be quiet right now. All right, have a good weekend. And then I dismiss them. I come back Monday, and the assistant principal is this guy, Acevedo. He comes to me. He's like, Kurt, can I talk to you in a minute? It's like, yeah, what's up? He's
Him,
like,
I know.
Yeah. And he's like, hey, one of the parents told me that their child said that you broke a bookshelf? You smashed a bookshelf? And I was like, well, no. And I tell him what I just told you, that, I picked it up just to make the noise, and the thing fell apart. And I'm like, and he's like, well, whatever you did, don't break any more furniture, but it kept them calm. I was like, yeah. You're like, don't tell anybody. But I was like, okay. And the next couple of weeks, it went really good. We just like that was like the low point / the baseline. And then from there, that Monday they came back, and it was sort of like they had the weekend to think of it. I was like, yeah, it was a good week. He got mad though. Let's not get him mad. And it seemed like they got me. So for the next 2 weeks, things went smoother and smoother. And I had it down. After a month with them, they came to me and said, all right, we found another teacher. So you're only going to have 20 of these kids.
Wow.
And they were like, and now you pick. And I was like,
oh my God,
how do I do that? And at this point, the kids had really connected with me.
And you probably fell in love with a lot of them.
Yeah.
Right? Oh.
And it was tough, but I kept 20. And then the rest of the year was cake after that. I was like, I went from 40 kids to 20. Please, this is easy. And I loved it. And to this day, I'm still friends with some of those kids, like friends. Like Angel helps me do my podcast. He helped me get started with that. And he does production work in the Hudson Valley and has his own company. And he lives in Kingston. He's 38 years old now.
Right.
And that kid was a 10-year-old kid in my class all those years ago. And he's my friend. He's been at my house. He's met my children. So I kept, like, that first year really solidified what I wanted to do. I understood that, like, kids like the way I talk to them. They don't like it when I get mad. So build that trust with them so that if things go sideways and they start acting the fool, when I get forceful, they'll understand that's for a reason. It's not just me being an ogre. It's not me just yelling for the sake of yelling. And
right.
I really found that was really helpful in the classroom.
Right. So then the thing that I also want to explore is, like, number one, everybody, you can't see him, but he's a big, handsome brown man with the Metallica hoodie on, my style. But it's like, you see these films that I despise, like Dangerous Minds. Like the white lady goes into the ghetto and she does, and then all of a sudden she's doing the dance and like the kids are like, whatever. But like you are you come from a home where like your parents get separated. You have a little bit of a gumbo, right? But now you're like if you guys, you don't know, like that neighborhood is a completely impoverished neighborhood with very little opportunity, with very little resources. When I mean like single parent homes, that's like 98% there. And it's, we're coming out of like the 70s and the 80s where there's like drug epidemics. And like now you can't even go, 10 blocks in New York City anywhere and find a vacant lot. But there were vacant lots and abandoned buildings all over that neighborhood. So you have these kids that are, and they're gold, like in their eyes, like to see somebody come in, like who means business, but also is not like somebody just barking at them. I can't even imagine what it's like for them, And were you even cognizant that that's what was going on?
No, I mean, I look back now and say, yeah, I guess I had kind of an impact, but at the time, it was just, no, this is great. When I finished school, I graduated from Stony Brook. It took me a year plus to like pay off my degree. Things were tight at home. I didn't have a lot of money. I had to work this terrible job down in the West Village for $6 an hour.
What were you doing?
I was working in a printing mill, just loading and unloading trucks full of like paper for print rolls.
Wow.
So it was like 1,000-pound rolls, 2,000-pound rolls. So
4-year degree. Yeah. I'm loading trucks.
For $6 an hour. So when I got the job teaching, I was like, oh my God, like this was quadrupling my money.
Right.
And I enjoyed it. And I had to get good at stuff again. Like I had to teach math and science. I knew history pretty well, but I didn't know how to do these other things. So it was like, I would get home like, all right, how do I figure out how to do this better? So it's sort of like, instead of being distracted by like, oh, I'm going to just go out and get drunk, or I'm just going to hang with my friends, or I'm just going to count my money, I was like, I better get better at this.
Right. So thinking about the parallels where like, it's almost like on the football field, we got to create these plays. We got to prepare that. We got to do these things where that part of your brain coupled with like the coaching when you were a kid, it's like marrying each other. You're saying, okay, this worked and this didn't work. And how can I poke at this to get these kids to really open up? Yeah.
And first and foremost, more than like knowing the content, it was wanting them to learn the content from me.
Right.
Like I need you on my page, and we're going to get through this together. We're going to learn this together. You like the way I'm doing this right now? You do? Good. Then let's keep doing things this way. Because, I tell kids even now, I'm like, because if we go sideways, if I feel like you're disrespecting the knowledge and disrespecting me, I turn green, my clothes rip, I turn into the Hulk. Let's not have that. And they always seem to get that.
Yeah, you already saw the bookshelf.
Yeah. and what would happen is, some of the football lessons come into this where it's sort of like, let's work our way through this. We get better at this the more we do this. You don't run a play once in practice, you run it 10 times in practice.
And it's not a we, it's not a me, it's a we.
Yeah. And it just felt natural. At the time, I was 23, and then I turned 24, so I'm still really young. I'm
green.
I don't have a serious girlfriend. I'm not married, obviously, yet, or kids or anything. So this is my life, what I'm doing, over the next couple of years, I just feel like I'm progressing really quickly. But it was also where I'm not a history major, so I'm a history major. I'm not an education major, so I don't have my permanent license. So every year, at the end of the year, it's like, all right, next year you're teaching third grade. It's like, wait, what? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Are they putting the screws to you like, okay, you got to get a license, you got to get a master's? Or are they asking you even like are you following the playbook for curriculum?
Well,
or are they just happy with your results?
They were happy with the results. Today things are a lot more rigid, and I couldn't get away with now what I was doing then. Like you had mentioned, the area I'm teaching in District 7 in South Bronx, it's a roughneck area. They're having a hard time getting teachers. I was on sort of like the last helicopter out of Hanoi as far as the old way of doing things. Right. I did not have to have a teaching license yet. Today you have to. I didn't even have to pursue one. I didn't start taking education classes for 2 more years.
Wow.
So I'm just kind of winging this and seeing what works and what doesn't, and trying to take advice from people that I see that seem to know what they're doing, whether it's talking to your mom or talking to other teachers. There's this one teacher, Miss Arroyo.
Oh, man. Carmen, right?
Yeah. And she had this way about her that she never seemed stressed. You never saw her sweat. And she's teaching 4th grade to kids that are Latino, and they don't speak almost any English. And you never saw her tense. And I was like, I want to do like that. Like, she's doing the same thing I'm doing, but I'm sweating and she's not.
Yeah, she was like... She was my kindergarten teacher. And when I went there, I don't know if they have them now. Yeah. And even though, whatever, like I was in KBL, BL means bilingual. They teach you in English and Spanish. And she was my teacher, man. Mm. And she was just like a dandelion in the wind, man. She was like, and this is in like 1985, like down there. And It was like madness and whatever. And so she was there, and she knew my mom, and like Miss Aviles was there. Wow. And like they did it, and every teacher poured themselves into the kids. Like we would have like Miss Aviles would make like these paper mache things for like Christmas stuff and like whatever. So like there was like, the teachers were really part of the community in that school.
Yeah. And what was interesting was that a lot of teachers over the years, I've been doing this a long time now, they get jaded real quick. And I think because they start younger and they're in programs where they're side by side with friends starting at the same time, and it almost becomes like in Grey's Anatomy, like, oh, I had to work all these hours, but now we'll go to the bar together and commiserate and complain while we're there. I was the youngest teacher by close to 10 years of anyone else in that school.
Whoa.
So everyone was senior to me. So I'm not socializing. I'm not there to be friends or, hey, let's hang out and we can talk about how. So it was just work to me. I'm going to see what you're doing, and then I'm going to go home and I'm going to think about how this. So in a way, the isolation worked for me. There wasn't anybody to hear me go, oh, this job is hard. It was hard, but I didn't have time to think about it. I didn't have time to dwell on it. And I didn't have anybody at my side that was in my age bracket telling me, yeah, it is hard. That principal's a jerk. Nobody was doing that with me.
Right.
Like my compatriots were 20 years older than me, and it was sort of like, all right, so, and nobody's helping me. There's no mentor program. There's no, nothing. So it's like, figure this out. You like this job, or do you want to go back to the $6 an hour job?
Right.
And that's how I looked at it.
How long were you in that school?
I was there for 6 years.
Wow. Okay, so you're in your early 20s when you get there. By the time you leave there, it's like going through buds or something. You're like a Navy SEAL teacher now.
Well, and then I wind up I had subbed at a middle school in one of those summers.
Same district?
Same district.
Okay.
And the principal there, her name was Rios. She's like, oh, you're pretty good. How do you feel about going to middle school? And at the time, it sounds pretty cool now, but I got elected union rep at my school, at that elementary school. I want to
Wow.
be the union rep. And I was like, I still got
The young guy being the union rep.
yeah, and I was like, I still got another year of being the union rep. I don't want to leave in the middle of my term, which looking back now, I was like, why not? Just go if it's a better job. But I didn't. So I stayed another year. And then I went to the middle school, which was about a mile away, same district, over 149 in St. Anne's. And
That's a tough neighborhood.
yeah, that's 162.
Yeah.
And I was there for 10 years. And yeah, it was a roughneck area. But again, I loved it. And they had a big yard. So every day at lunch, the kids would go out for lunch and I would go out and play official quarterback. Like I didn't eat lunch with the other teachers. And sometimes in my time as being a teacher, I'm not as big on the social element with other teachers sometimes. That's kind of maybe one of the flaws of my teaching. But it was also something that buoyed me with the kids. Like, yeah, it's lunch. I'm going, of course I'm playing quarterback.
Right.
That's what I did at lunch. I wound up setting a flag football team there because why not? So I'm coaching football the whole time. So now what's happening, I went back to coaching football in like 96, 97
Where are you coaching?
in the Bronx and in Pelham Bay Park. So
How did you find that team to coach or whatever? How did that happen?
funny story. Is that right if I curse?
Sure.
All right. There's no
Fuck.
There's a thing where it says you shouldn't shit where you eat.
Right.
Well, I was dating this teacher and shouldn't have. Anyway, and she didn't like me the way I liked her. So, I was sad and I go into the park. I lived across the street from the park on Wilkinson Avenue. So I go into the park and I'm just like riding my bike just to try and vent out, exercise out my frustration.
Sure.
And I see there's a whole football program out there, similar to the program I coached my son and my brother in when he was younger. And so I pull over my bike and I'm like, what is this? And I'm like, they were the Bronx Warriors. It's like, I'm like, you need help? And I'm like, sure. You coach? It's like, yeah. And like that. And then they put me with this guy named Smitty, this big black dude, and serious voice like Darth Vader. And they put me with him because nobody would work with him.
Oh,
like
my
he
God.
was just so intense that he just didn't have good working relationships with anybody. Smitty is one of the guiding lights of my life. He is like a serious father figure to me. And I met him there on that football field that day, and I'm still friends with him 25 years later.
Wow.
So it was one of those situations where, again, it's just, everything just works out.
Listen,
like serendipity, like, oh
right.
my God, if I hadn't dated the girl and then she rebuffed me, I wouldn't have been in the park to coach to the football and to meet this guy who's had such an impact on my life.
Right. It's like outside looking in, I'm like, dude, the Lord showed up.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like, you're pedaling the bike in your mind. You're like, I got all my life to live. I got all my love to get. Like, you're in that space, right?
Yeah.
And then here's football.
Yeah.
Here are you, right? Yeah. Same thing where you're like, okay, prodigy. I'm going to use air quotes because I know you don't like it. So, but like prodigy coach, right? Then all of a sudden you're the youngest teacher in the school. Then you're the union rep. Like this is part of you. This is in your DNA. This is who you are. And then you're riding your bike and you meet like the worst guy, allegedly, right? And you're coming from one of the worst schools, allegedly. Yeah. But this is where you fit in, like a glove. Like when nobody wants anything to do with this guy, and this guy is like everything to you right now.
Yeah.
To this day.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So how did you fit in with this team right away?
Well, the first team we're coaching, we went undefeated and won a championship for that level of football.
Results help.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
And it was just one of those things where like when I was younger and I coached my brother, I coached offense, and he was like, well, I coached the offense, so you could do defense. Like, all right. I better figure this out in a hurry. And I did.
Right.
And to this day, I'm a defensive coordinator. I'm a defensive coordinator at Lehman High School.
Right.
But it started then there with Smitty. And it just started with simple things like that I was doing in my classroom. Like, I'm going to talk to you how to do this. I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to drop back and open up my leg to drop back in coverage. And do it the way I do it. Like, let's do it this way. All right, cool. And if the kids went sideways, it was the same thing. Like, I burst at them. Like, come on now. What? And it'd be fast, like staccato talking to them, the same way I would do in the classroom. And the kids realized, I like the nice Kurt. I like the nice coach. I like the nice Mr. Bascom. So let's be on his page so we get all of that.
Right.
So the football thing went really well. And
how old were the kids?
The first year I'm coaching, they were 11 and 12.
Oh.
And yeah. And then we went to 13, 14, and then we had a bantam team that played travel, and those kids were 14 to 16. So now that I'm in the middle school, so now I'm recruiting kids from the middle school to play with me, on my football team. So now it's kind of like peanut butter and jelly meeting in the middle. And like, this is like fantastic. These two things I love are now.
And as your career is growing, it's like everything is growing with you.
Yeah.
Like the middle school, and all of a sudden, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And what happens then is after several years,
because the middle school didn't have like a football program or anything.
Most middle schools in the Bronx don't have football programs. They might have, some have basketball programs. A couple of them even have, baseball or softball programs, but most of them don't have football.
That's sad.
Yeah. And
the kids need that, especially at that age, when they 12, 13, 14.
Well, that's where the youth organizations in the Bronx and in the city make a big difference, whether it's the Warriors or Bronx Wolfpack or Bandits. There's a lot of good programs out there that are trying to get to young kids, especially football, because it's a more interactive sport. It's truly a team sport more so than any other sport. Like in basketball, you only got 5 players out there. One great player can make a big difference, especially in youth sports. Football, that's not the case. You need 11 guys out there.
You have an assignment.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
And eventually one of the coaches at the Bronx Warriors program gets a gig at Spelman High School, Cardinal Spellman. Mm-hmm. And he needs some coaches. So he grabs me and Smitty and a few others, and now I'm a high school coach.
Wow.
At Cardinal Spellman.
How's it going in the school while this is progressing?
It's going pretty well. I'm teaching at this point now. I went from elementary school, so I'm teaching 7th and 8th grade social studies. And
right, so you went into history, which is your college thing.
So now I'm primarily a history teacher, and that's going. I gotta say, it's going really good. I'm getting good rapport with my students.
And the younger kids kind of prepped you.
Yeah. So it's going really well. But I am starting to feel like at some point where like a lot of the teachers that were coming in, the younger teachers, and now I'm not the youngest teacher anymore. And I'm seeing the newer crop of teachers coming in, and they're more partiers than I am, and they want to go out a little more, and they want to, they're not as about the job, I feel, as maybe I was.
Right. So like for me, this is what here comes my judgmental stuff. Everybody, pencil and paper, write it down. This is where I used to see peripherally like Dangerous Minds kind of thing, where they had like Teach for America stuff, where like all you needed, you want to be a public school teacher? Like I would meet people, oddly enough, like you said, I'd meet people in AA. They're like, I just came here from Indiana, from Kentucky, because I got a job teaching schools in Brownsville, in East New York. And they would send like these white lily kids from Iowa to be like, oh man, you guys are going to go to Harlem and to the Lower East Side, and you're going to be working in this all, ethnic school, and they had no connection to the kids. They had no path to connection, and they would be in the bars drinking. Then they'd come to AA, put a buck in a basket, try to get sober. Yeah. So I understand what you mean, because like there's like a gap between when those programs started, when you came in and you're just like, my mom told me, she was like, Jared, when Kirk came into the school, he said, I saw one time his dad was on the corner, like waiting in the car, waiting for him, like one day. It's like, that doesn't exist anymore. Now they have these programs where like maybe they're not meant to be educators.
Well, you got a free master's degree. All you had to do
that was the thing.
Yeah, all you had to do was teach in the Bronx or in a roughneck area for 2 years. And to me, it felt like the Peace Corps in the 60s. Now
exactly.
I could say, I taught in the South Bronx, or I taught in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And it was like,
what was the thing where the Hands Across America, like all that stuff?
And some of them were really good teachers, and they worked really hard. But what happened was they didn't know how to pace themselves, some of them, or they were so used to the scaffolding and support of their fellow compatriots to where, if they had a bad day, rather than kind of reflect on what can I do to be better, it would be more like, well, yeah, it's hard there, and that principal's not helping you. And it's like, yeah, but what are you doing? All of that might be true. This is a rough area. There aren't the same number of materials. These kids are more hardcore. But what are you doing to get yourself better?
Right, accountability, where like you didn't have those other goldfish when you were there. You just had like, listen, I'm going to have to ask this lady, Miss Arroyo, or like Mr. Turkel or whoever, like to just be like, listen, I don't know how to ABC. And they'll be like, listen, we didn't know how to ABC, but try DEF. Yeah. Like, because, that's a whole thing.
So it was where there was a teacher I worked with. She passed away some years ago. She used to say this thing, and it's like, I don't want to slam Teach for America. I wasn't gonna bring up the name, but you mentioned it.
Yeah, yeah.
She used to say, "Oh, you teach for America? I teach for the Bronx."
That's funny.
You know, and that's kind of how I felt. And so it was the quality. The school was a good school, but it was starting to decline. The administrators there were not very involved. At one point, Jared, I taught in that school for 10 years. I didn't get observed one time in 10 years.
Wow.
I get observed 3 times a year now, you know, and I've been doing this 28 years. So it was like there was bad things happening there and nobody was paying attention to it. But in turn, so I stopped paying attention and I just focused on my kids.
Right. You were like accountability.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like where like everybody, maybe other people are like, oh, you know, there's no structure here. There's no whatever. But you were like, what can I do?
Yeah.
How can I? Yeah.
And it sounds a little arrogant saying it out loud, but it was just like, yeah, I'm going to focus on these kids and teach them the best I can. And I'm coaching football also. And so, hey, maybe I can get some of these kids to come play with me now at Cardinal Spellman.
Sure.
And that went really well. And then,
But all of that is good.
yeah, but it wasn't always perceived that way. You know, I just feel like
By you or by other people?
by others.
Right.
I felt like I look back now, I've been teaching, like I said, 28 years, and I don't have a million close friends. Like, there's not many people that I worked with in those buildings, and then in that building in particular, that, you know, 12 years, 13 years later, I can call them and talk to them.
Right.
Because, you know, some of them were good people and some of them were good teachers, but some of them, they were like, I got my master's. It's been 2 years. See ya. You
Right.
know, and so I just focused on that for a long time. And then at some point, I just got frustrated with things in that school. I got frustrated with the administration. I had,
You had to turn the page.
yeah, and I want to leave into another school. And it was funny that when I went to this other school, I went from District 7 to District 9, which was somehow like going from the fire into the hotter fire. It was
Right.
It was even worse. District 9 was terrible, man. I go to 339, and at 339, the principal there had been a teacher in 162, so he knew me, and you know he'd been asking, "Hey, are you interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm good, I'm good." And I had run this senior activity, where like we would have, you know, activities outside. It was like senior day. And because it was hot, we used to barbecue. And in a cost-cutting move, the administrator said, instead of barbecuing, we'll just order some pizza. And there was 180 kids, seniors. And they ordered 15 pizza pies
No,
for 180
come on.
kids.
Yeah.
And they ordered 10 bottles of soda. And it was 100 degrees out. It was mad hot. I don't know if it was 100, but it was mad hot out. And we were in the yard, and they barely ordered enough food. I hired a DJ. It was a former student of mine that now the DJ works. I bring him in. He's going to play music. The people that were there, the administrators handling all these things, they didn't even bother to offer this guy a bottle of water or a slice of pizza. And I was just ticked. And I did something that I normally don't do. I went on Facebook, and I complained. I bitched. I said, can you
Became
believe...
a Karen.
Yeah. I said, can you believe what's happening at 162, that this...
Yeah.
And that former colleague of mine that was now a principal saw my message, texted me that night. He's like, you should come to my school. And it was sort of like, you know, when you mad at your girlfriend and all of a sudden that night you see some pretty girl and you go and cheat on your girlfriend when you shouldn't. Right. That's almost how I felt it was going on right here with me, with my career. Because Friday this happened. Friday night I wrote this. Saturday he texted me. Monday I visited the school. Tuesday I told my school, I'm out. I'm leaving.
Right.
Like that. And packed up all my stuff and went.
This was like a vine that had been growing, though.
Yeah, I mean, I had been increasingly unhappy, but the way that went that day, I left.
Regrettable.
Yeah, and so I went to this other school, and it was a good school, but that principal, he left after a year. And then the new person that came in, they called her a closer because she would come into a school and close out the staff that was there and bring in the people she wanted. That's what she did.
Wow.
She was known for it. And so my second year, I was like, I got to get out of here. She fired me from this after-school gig for some BS reason. And then the next day made an announcement giving me accolades about how great I was at that program. It's like, then why'd you just let me go from that program? You know, that's the kind of thing I was at there. So, you know, at that time, I was married. We'd moved upstate. I had my son and then soon my daughter, so I had taken a break from coaching for a little while.
Right.
So these things were getting to me. I didn't have that escape of football so much. I wound up leaving that school purely by luck, and I wound up at Van Ness Academy, where I'm at now, which is a great school in Morris Park. And I've been there now for 10 years.
Right. So what are you doing there now?
I still teach 7th and 8th grade social studies.
Right.
And being there, it was a funny story in that we were at 339. There was some teachers I was close with there. And we went out, at the end of the school year, and we had some drinks. And the next day, I had applied to the school. There's something called an open market in school in NYC schools. And I put a check mark next to the school, like, let's see if they call me. And the next morning, lo and behold, I get a call. I forgot all about it. It was weeks later. I get a call from this school, and I'm hungover, I got to be honest. And this woman, Hernandez, calls me, and she says, hey, is this Kurt Bascom? I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, we have your name here from Open Market, and we have an opening here, and we were wondering if you want to come in for an interview. And I was mad hungover. So I was like, you know what? No, I'm good. I got a job. And
Right.
she said, and I'm about to hang up the phone. And she goes, no. You want to stay on this phone here. Trust me. Come in. We'll set up a date. You got to come in. I was like, all right. And it was like, thank God she had the sense to be like, no, don't go. Thank God I didn't let my hangover, because my life would have taken a different course.
Hangover, ego, everything.
Yeah.
Again, the Lord shows up again. This is insane.
Yeah. And then I wound up at that school, and I've been there, and it's a good school. Like any other place, it has its flaws. But I've been there 10 years, and I like it there. Again, there's flaws, and this is where my ego comes into it. Well, maybe people aren't working as hard as I'm working, but it's like, who am I to judge that? And sometimes I get caught up in that. Sometimes I'll come home and I'll complain to my wife or to my friends, and this teacher does this, and this, or the school does this, and this, and it's like, wait a minute, because I have, because my motor runs at this speed, I shouldn't expect everyone's motor to run at this speed, and sometimes I do get caught up in that,
Right.
And it's a little bit of arrogance on my part, but I've been there for 10 years and I've been happy.
Yeah, but I also think that, it's very admirable that you even, you're learning that about yourself. But, I think for me is, you expect, like all of my coaches when I was growing up, like they demanded excellence. They just demanded it. And because they knew that we were capable. Like they didn't push kids that didn't have it.
Yeah.
They just didn't. And coaches could smell that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I know when I lost my way in like junior high school and high school and with my athletic career, I remember this. I remember I was playing high school baseball, and I was a good ball player because my dad really invested a lot of time in me. With baseball, he was like relentless, and
He was a phenomenal coach to both
Yeah.
you and your sister.
yeah, he was not, and he was nuts too. And listen, he was there all the time. Look, I've seen my dad beat up other coaches too, but like because he's whatever, he gets he got emotional. But at this, because he didn't want nobody cheating on us. But that's a different story. Either way, but like there was no, there was nowhere for me to play ball where I was. I played in Spring Valley, and then I didn't like outgrow there. But my dad was just like, he's like, whatever. You're in all these traveling teams and all this other stuff. He's like, really, if you wanna get good, we're gonna sign you up to play baseball in Haverstraw, because that's where all the kids were. Like all the North Rockland kids were like incredible ball players. They all came out of Haverstraw. I played for like T.J. McGowan and Son Funeral Home, right? But by the time I got to high school, there was no like American Legion team, right? So. I got like a waiver to play, I think out of like Park Ridge in New Jersey. They had a team there. So I go for the tryouts. I'm there. It's like 2 days. I'm having an incredible tryout. They want to sign me to play for the team. And then from there, like maybe like some college people would come. But so they go talk to my high school baseball coach. And I've been playing varsity, I think, since 9th grade. And I was playing at Rampo High School. And they were like, oh, you don't want him. He's already got a kid. He can't keep his dick in his pants, blah, blah, blah. So, like, that coach had already given up on me because of my behavior, and he could smell it, even though I had talent. And he was smart, because what happened was, all right, so I ended up not playing Legion ball, but, like, they were on a tournament upstate, I think in Ithaca, and like 6 players got kicked off the team for drinking vodka in the hotel. So guess who would have been the 7th, right? So either way, like, you know, when you spend so much time being a person of influence to these kids, like you have like a third eye. So when you see that other people in the position, it's going to be hard for somebody like you to ignore, because you're not just a teacher. You've been like a coach. Like, it's a transferable skill that maybe they're like, listen, I teach and then I go home and I do yoga and Peloton, and that's what maybe some of them do. They don't have any other kind of interaction outside of this curriculum with these kids, you know?
I've always just tried to make the material real to them, you know, make it relatable to them in the classroom. And then on a football field, kind of the same thing. Understand why you're doing this. Understand what you're going to get from doing this, what we're going to get from doing this. You know, I wound up returning to football. I came back to Cardinal Spellman after my kids were born. I told you I'd take a year break, some years break. And right away I made an impact. And again, Smitty's there. Right. So I come back and I'm back with Smitty, this really important figure in my life. And they have me coaching defense with this guy, George. And George was a really intense guy. And most people, he wouldn't listen to any advice. But I knew George way back from when I started coaching again in the Bronx 10 years earlier. And he would listen to me. You know, I had coached his kids when they were younger. He knew who I was. I'm younger than him, but, you know, he looked at me as a peer. And so when I got to Spellman, literally, he was a great coach. He really was, but he wasn't listening to anybody. He was really intense. Like he was the screaming coach.
Right.
And when I came in, it was sort of like I was the other voice, you know.
Like good cop, bad cop?
Yeah, a little bit. And I felt like he's calling the shots, but he's listening to what I have to say.
Right.
The first year there, we get to the championship game, we get blown out. The following year, we start working. I'm playing a bigger role now because I've been back for a while, and it ain't on me. That was a great team. It was well coached, and George listens, and we make an impact. We win a championship.
Wow.
You know, and over there, I got one of the championship rings, and a year later, I get another one. We won 2 in 2 years.
Wow.
And Spellman hadn't won one in a long, long time. So it was a really proud moment for me and for the team, and those boys were phenomenal people, and still communicate with some of those guys. And I wound up leaving there because they went in another direction with the defensive coordinator. The guy I worked with retired, and they went with somebody who had more years of experience.
Right. Now that you got the rings, they're like, they can probably think that they can get somebody like that.
Well,
allegedly.
Unfortunately, the guy that came in, he had 30 years of experience on football field, and he just knew X's and O's, but he didn't know people.
Right.
He just didn't. Kids did not like him. And he was looking around for another job. He had been looking. I wasn't looking. I was content where I was, and I just figured I was next. And the head coach called me, and he said, listen, we're going to go with this person instead of you. I'm sorry. And I'm like, you waited all these months to tell me because you were waiting. He was waiting to see if he found another job. See, I wasn't looking for another job. I was good here. But now I'm going to look. You know, so I'm not coming back.
Right.
So my first school, I drive past Columbus High School, which is about a mile from where I work. I walk in, I talk to the head coach. I'm like, you need some help around here? He said, do you coach? I said, yeah. He said, what do you coach? I said, I coach defense. He said, you coach defense? I said, yeah. He said, you pretty good? I'm like, I got 2 rings. I'm all right. And he hires me on the spot.
Wow.
And we did some things there. You know, that program at Columbus, they hadn't won a game in years, literally. And
like a game?
They hadn't won a single game in over 2 years.
Oh my God.
And the previous season, they were losing games 40-0, 50-0. They were just getting sunned. And, you know, the program was in shambles. So I came in, and again, it was sort of like, let's try and bring some structure to this. Let's sort of like, I'm going to model these things. I'm going to act these things out. You like the way I'm doing it? Good. If you don't want me to get upset, and let's be on the same page. And that worked. We went 5-4 that season.
That's great.
Made the playoffs, you know, and I just felt really proud about that. And the following year, we lost a year because of COVID.
Right.
We came back the following year after that. And now, again, I'm teaching at Van Ness Academy at VNA. Things are going good there. I stay at Columbus some more. We go 6-1 the following year, make the playoffs again.
Stick around.
Yeah, so things are going good. But it was also where I managed to get one of my players recruited to a college to play college football, which is insane. I didn't even know how to do it. I was just calling around people and just, and it's just Division III, but he's a great kid, this boy, Andre.
No, it's incredible. Are you kidding me?
And I brought him to the college. I took a day off from work, and we drove up there, and I'm showing him the school, and they're giving us the guided tour, and it's phenomenal. And it struck me that if he's going to move on to something more, why can't I? So the Lehman coach had been reaching out to me. We'd been talking over the months, and he needs a defensive coordinator, and it's a step up, and it was an opportunity to kind of, challenge myself a little bit. So I decided to leave Columbus, and which was tough because I love those kids, and I love what we did with the program, but the program, it was time for me to find something else, let's say.
Right. Yeah, and how do you, you have the same kind of vignette in like each portion of your life where you're entering this place and you have the same mold. You're like, all right, listen, nobody is, you got one guy yelling at the students. You got one guy yelling at the players. And you're like, listen, this is not, I'm not saying it works, it doesn't work, but this is not who I am. No. And I need to, and I'm just going to be who I am, and we will all adjust a little bit. And that's how you're getting like this success where like everybody else is like, miserable. The teachers are miserable. The other coaches, you can't be happy yelling at kids. That one coach that told the other guy not to take me on the Legion team, he was such an asshole that, oh my God, this guy was like, he was like, yeah, he didn't deserve to be there, and it was okay. And maybe he had personal, now as an adult, I'm like, maybe he had personal things going on in his life. I don't know. But like, it got so bad that, shout out to my boy Bing, like one of the, like he barked at this kid who was like the nicest, softest, sweetest kid. But the kid was like, he ended up being like, getting into like MMA and like cage fighting and that kind of stuff, even though he's like a super talented and successful equities trader, right? Wow. But so he had that inside of him, and like he barked at this kid, and the kid in 11th grade threw him a beating in the locker room, beat up the coach. Wow. So like, your style of just being who you are, saying like, okay, I know that this is the way that these things are being run, and here I am, and I'm just going to make adjustments that I have to make, but I'm going to be who I am with these kids. Like, how does that even make you feel, knowing that, it's not even taking a gamble, but just saying, listen, this is who I am, this is what I got, and then you're having success?
Yeah, I don't know. I just sort of, every so often, and me and I had talked about this, you got to challenge yourself a little bit, put yourself in a spot that's a little more vulnerable. And I guess professionally, both in football and teaching at some points, I've done that. And it's sort of like just believing in the idea that whatever I've done has gotten me here, and where here is right now is pretty good. So let me have confidence in myself enough to get through the difficulties of this new challenge. When I got to 161 all those years ago, it's like, all right, I never taught, but it's better than $6 an hour in the West Village. When I got to coaching again, I was like, a lot of, I haven't done this in a long time, and this is in the Bronx. Let me go with it. People have different ways that work for themselves, and my way is a little different. It works for me. I do think for a lot of people out there, it's great to get guidance, and it's great to take classes, and it's great to find pre-established plans on how to get from X to Y to Z. But I didn't have those things. And I think it's kind of like me trusting my gut, me trusting the faith I have in myself and my spiritual personal beliefs, and just trying to make the best decisions, not from a selfish point of view, but from where I think is just the right thing to do, has really sort of helped.
Right, like humility.
Yeah.
Like you're just like, that's all it is. Like you're just like, listen, I don't know why there's only 10 pizza pies.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why these kids, like, I'm going to be out there playing football in the yard with the kids or like whatever. Like, you're not, when you have that connection with them, I'm sure they can feel like, listen, I respect the coach and everything, but he is one of us. He's not one of them. Where like in these environments, it's only us and them. In all those impoverished places, it's like, they have a lot of things that are stacked up against them, and nobody who they think right or wrong or feel right or wrong understands them and respects them.
Yeah. I do think, again, at my school, I have seen teachers that are trying to take those extra steps, that are like, no, I got to know them as people. And part of the way of doing that is you got to tell them who you are. Like, tell them something about yourself, and it's sort of like a lot of the way lessons I teach in a classroom have to do with my own life growing up,
Right.
So
you use yourself as the example.
Yeah. And I feel like that's made a difference in a classroom. I feel like it makes a difference on a football field to some extent. We'll see how that keeps going. Like, I'm at a new school now. I'm at Lehman High School, and that program is a next level football from where I've been at. I've never been at this level. I get there, and
Next level in what way?
It's a lot more competitive. It's a much bigger school. The program has had levels of success. Last season, I had a bad season, but they have more of a legacy of solid football, whereas Columbus, like I told you, they hadn't really won in a long time.
Right. Do they have expectations of you?
Well, yeah. I mean, they expect me to, help them do better. But my thing is, this is the biggest challenge I've ever taken, and I'm confident I'll do well. But like my first day there, I went there a couple weeks ago for the first time. I got lost getting in the building. Like, it was just like, holy cow, these buildings, it's huge and wide, and it's shaded differently. It looks different.
How many kids are in that school?
Oh, I don't even know. But the program has like 90-something kids in it.
Wow.
Whereas at Columbus, we had 28 kids because we had 28 helmets, which drove me nuts. Like, we can't buy more equipment here.
Right.
We can't. And then I get there and I look at their playbook and I speak to their head coach, and he's speaking in a vocabulary I'm not even ready for yet. And it was like, for the first time in a long time, I felt a little overwhelmed. Like, holy cow. A lot of that coming from me. I left the building, it was after, talk to everybody, and I walk out the wrong door. I set the alarm off in the building. I feel like the total noob. I'm like, holy shit, am I ready
It's
for
like
this?
161.
Yeah. And I was like, am I ready for this? I get home, I look at the film, I look at their playbook. I'm like, all right, I can make this work. But again, it's sort of like humbling in a way, like, all right, well, now I'm taking on something new. Let's see how I do it. I can't just come in expecting to succeed. I can come in hopeful and confident that I will succeed, but it's not written down. It's not guaranteed. I got to put in some work.
Right.
And it's done pretty well for me. I live a good life. I'm raising two kids now that they're learning. My daughter's 12, soon to be 13. My son turns 15 next month, and me and my wife have kind of taught them, like, you want something, you work for it, you work through it. You figure it out. You make smart decisions. You don't make rash decisions. You don't make decisions out of anger. You have anger. Anger's a gift, like Rage Against the Machine used to say. But it's your emotion. You control the emotion. Don't let it control you. And don't make decisions just out of anger. I did once, when I wrote that thing on Facebook about that school.
Right.
I was out of anger. And that could have not worked out. Thankfully, it did.
Right. Like, when we're saying, like, it's regrettable, meaning that, like, in hindsight, it could have been handled differently.
Yeah.
We're happy that it happened because it's part of the story, and it's something that you can, even if nothing more, then you can just teach your kids.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
And
so now we see. It's sort of, I'm 51 now. I could retire in 4 years. I feel good. I'm not looking at retiring anytime soon. I had been thinking for a minute of, coming closer to home. We'll see. Right now I like teaching in the Bronx. Right now I like coaching in the Bronx.
Right. This is like, you're at where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's incredible. It's incredible stuff.
But it's cool. Like, you and I have reconnected a lot recently because of this podcast. I love listening to your podcast.
Thank you.
And you have this great storytelling way about you, which kind of made me feel like, yeah, if he's doing that, I can do that. Why? Like, sometimes I second guess myself. Like, people don't want to hear you talk about you. But it's like, but that's what I kind of do at school a little bit, to kind of at least open the door. It's not all about me. Obviously, it's about the history. And it's not on a football field. It's not all about me. It's about what the team's doing in the plays. But it opens a door. And in hearing you do that, in a way, it opened the door for me to feel like, yeah, let me express these thoughts. And maybe somebody hears it and it resonates with them. Maybe not, But that it it helps me along the way. And like, I wasn't trying to be, like you said, a person of influence, but at some point, I guess it sort of happened, at least on some small level for a couple of the people I've worked with over the years.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you can recognize in yourself that there's endless possibilities, you're looking at everybody else like, why not? The same way you look at those teachers, like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, why not? I listen to you, like you can have a show about yourself. You can have a show about history. You can have a show about football. You can have a show about all of these things where, you're not like we joked, you're not like a 2-stripe white belt in your own life. Like you're like, and that's the thing, and I think that's what separates, other people, where just like you can have that perspective and just say, look, I'm going to try.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't tell my kids that they have to try and I'm not trying. Yeah. Then who am I? Yeah. Right.
I tell my students, I've the saying that if you could be great, why wouldn't you be great? And that's the thing. It's like if you have this opportunity, if you feel there's something more, why wouldn't you share it? Why would you be content to be mid-level? Why would you content to be less than your best self? And for me, it's kind of like, let me be the best teacher I can be. I'm not trying to be, on TV. Nobody's paying, $100,000 to watch me on TV. I'm not the Super Bowl, but I'm going to do the best I can in this little neck of the woods when working. And it's done pretty well for me. And I've had some support over the years from good administrators and friends and coworkers and my players coming back. And ultimately, they're the ultimate voice of affirmation. My players and my students, whether they say a year later, 2 years, 10 years, whatever number of years later, thank you. Like, you have no idea. And it's like, I guess
you don't have an idea. That's the thing. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Anyway, shout out your podcast. What's the name of it so everyone
it's
can
called
go listen?
Schooled by Mr. Bascom. And I've only had a few episodes out. I'm trying to get right back into it. And again, kudos to you for getting up in my butt and trying to tell me to get on this.
Yeah.
And basically, the first several of them was me interviewing former students, seeing where they are in life and how their earlier years got them to where they are now. And it was going really good, and we're going to get it going even better. So
yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Spiritual Experience. We're out. You know where to find us. Apple, Spotify, everywhere else. All walks of life. We're all doing positive things here, and we love you all. Peace. We want to thank you all for joining us today. And please don't forget to like and subscribe on all podcast platforms, and find us on Facebook where you can become part of our family. We'll see you around.